Welcome to the Fire Time Podcast, where it's never hot enough, slow is fast, and the way to win is to make it so stupidly easy to buy from you that there's no excuse not to. I'm your host, Tim Reed. And once again, I'm so excited to be here today. Welcome to the Fire Time Podcast. Well, hey, we continue to charge ahead through the summer with our Fire Time Magazine Rapid Reaction series. And like I said, I'm excited about today's episode. Now, just as context, in these Rapid Reaction episodes, what we do is we listen together to an audio article from the Fire Time Magazine. And then as soon as it's over, I hit record and give you my rapid reaction to it. And we do this a couple of times a year while we're in between seasons. So as we record this, we're in the middle of putting together our content for our next season that starts the Tuesday after Labor Day. And until then, we'll have these rapid reaction episodes. Now, this episode today is going to feature an audio article written by my friend Zack Estes that came out in the January 2025 edition of the Fire Time Magazine. And it's called 3 Tips for Increasing Throughput. Now, everything that Zack writes is truly amazing. He's been a guest on this podcast before, and he just thinks at like levels of organization that are beyond most of us. And like everything he writes, this is really, really good. Now, it's been a while since I've listened to it or read it, so it's going to be fresh for me just like it is for you, but I'm super excited to listen to it. You know, literally, like as we record this, I was just in a meeting today looking at some, upcoming objectives that our company has. And throughput is a huge thing for everybody, right? How do we increase the nozzle of our throughput so that we can continue to have products move and services go and revenue continue to move forward? So this is going to be a great article. I'm super excited to listen to it. And as soon as it's over, I'll give you my rapid reaction.
Three tips for increasing throughput, output, downtime, and improvements. By Zack Estes. Many businesses struggle to find work. If that's you, this content probably isn't for you. But far more businesses struggle with throughput. They have the jobs lined up, they just don't have the capacity to get them done. The problem isn't demand, the problem is supply. Your ability to consistently fulfill promises, deliver on time, and meet expectations. It's a productivity problem. Many businesses end up in this unfortunate cycle. They keep saying yes to every customer, thinking the workload will sort itself out. But soon, they find themselves stretched thin, missing deadlines, or even worse, delivering subpar work. And oftentimes, they're promising lead times they simply can't fulfill. Eventually, they become known for this issue. They're not just a business anymore. They're that business. The business that overpromises and underdelivers. The brand of broken promises. And as every business owner knows, once you lose trust, it's nearly impossible to regain. A broken promise leads to less trust. Less trust leads to fewer customers. Fewer customers leads to fewer opportunities. And eventually, you might just be back to square one, struggling to find work. So if you're struggling to find work, this might still be for you after all. It just depends on the root cause. And if your backlog is filled, but your productivity can't keep up, read on. Poor productivity is a critical variable most businesses aren't effectively solving for. It's the silent killer of growth. Let's get into how to fix it. Tip 1. Understand your output. What you do matters. But do you want to know what matters even more? What you produce. The outputs. Inputs are important, sure, but your inputs, your tools, your secret sauce, the proprietary way you do things, matters far less than the outputs you produce for your customers. Too many businesses are caught up idolizing their inputs, focusing on what makes them unique, but forgetting what truly matters to the customer is the result. You can have the most intricate, carefully planned processes in the world, but if you're not producing the results customers are paying for, those processes are irrelevant. So, the first step for businesses struggling with throughput and productivity is understanding the current state of their output production. This means you need to be crystal clear on your deliverables. Here are a few examples of outputs for different types of businesses. Marketing agency, number of campaigns launched or improved per day. Dirt contractor, cubic yards of dirt moved per day. Coffee roaster, pounds of coffee roasted per shift. These are measurable, tangible results. You need to start tracking these metrics if you aren't already, because without knowing how much you're producing, you have no benchmark for improvement. Your business exists to deliver value to your customers. The outputs are the actual proof that you're doing that. Tip 2. Understand your downtime. Let's talk about downtime. Most businesses have far more downtime than they realize. Downtime is the enemy of productivity. It's any period during which work isn't actively contributing to output, the deliverables your customers pay for. We'll call the time spent actively producing outputs uptime. Everything else, that's downtime. Here's how you can visualize any process. Resources lead to process, lead to result. You start with resources, information, tools, and materials. You then use those resources to process them, turn them into a finished result. This is where the magic happens. This is where value is created. But here's the problem. In too many small businesses, employees are spending way too much time gathering resources, waiting for approvals, or troubleshooting issues instead of producing. In other words, they're stuck in downtime. Meanwhile, your customers don't care how difficult it is for you to get ready to actually produce value. All they care about is the result, the solution to their problem delivered on time at the price you promised. When you're caught up in downtime, your profitability erodes. You start losing money, your stress levels spike, and worst of all, you risk breaking your promises to customers. If your productivity issues lead to delays or cost overruns, that broken promise will haunt your business. So now that you're measuring your outputs, tip 1, the next step is to measure your downtime. What's eating away at your employees' valuable time that could otherwise be spent creating value? Here are some typical examples of downtime activities. Searching for resources, for example, tools, materials, or information. Waiting for approvals from management. Attending meetings that don't drive output. Setting up and maintaining equipment. Reworking defects. Dealing with complicated team communication. I'm not saying you should suddenly implement an extensive time tracking system that monitors every minute of downtime, although when you're ready for it, tracking that will be invaluable. But I am suggesting you start paying attention to the patterns. Where are you losing time? Where are your employees getting stuck? Create a list of the top reasons your team isn't producing value, anything that frustrates or delays them from focusing on the core task at hand. Tip 3. Understand your improvements. Now that you know how much output you're producing, tip 1, and where your downtime is coming from, tip 2, you can intelligently start making improvements. Improvement is the name of the game. But here's the thing. Not all changes are improvements. Improvement requires a baseline standard. If you don't have a standard for comparison, any change you make is just that, a change. It's simply doing things differently without knowing if it's actually better. And without a standard, it's impossible to know if your tweaks are actually reducing downtime and increasing throughput. Change is reactive. It's what you do when you're frustrated and desperate for different results. Improvement, however, is intentional. It's what you do when you understand the baseline, identify a bottleneck, and strategically address it. So let's put this into context. If you're trying to increase throughput, the goal is to produce more outputs in the same amount of time. Here's how it all connects. 1. By measuring your outputs, you establish your initial standard. 2. By measuring your downtime, you uncover the reasons why that's your current standard. And 3. Now, by understanding improvements, you can target downtime and make intentional adjustments to improve output. But don't stop there. Making improvements is a continuous process. As you reduce downtime and increase throughput, you'll uncover new inefficiencies. This is where lean principles come into play. The idea that improvement should be an ongoing daily habit, not just a one-off project. Bonus tip: build a culture of continuous improvement. If you want to solve your productivity problem once and for all, it's not enough to make a few quick fixes. You need to create a culture where improvement is part of your everyday workflow. This can be as simple as setting aside time each day to focus on process improvement. If you spent just 30 minutes each day working on these tips, you'd be amazed at how quickly your productivity would improve. But to build a culture of continuous improvement, it has to come from the top. Leadership needs to buy into the idea that everyone can contribute to the process. Every employee at every level should have a role in identifying inefficiencies and suggesting improvements. When your team is empowered to make improvements, they feel more invested in the success of the business. And when improvement becomes second nature, you'll start to see compounding gains in productivity, profitability, and customer satisfaction. Fixing the root cause of poor productivity. If you're dealing with a productivity problem, don't wait until it snowballs into broken promises and lost customers. Start by understanding your output, measuring your downtime, and making intentional improvements. And most importantly, focus on building a culture of continuous improvement. When you do this, you'll not only increase your throughput, you'll build a reputation for reliability, trust, and value creation. Customers will notice, employees will notice, and your business will operate more efficiently, with fewer headaches and more opportunities for growth. After all, a business that keeps its promises is a business that thrives.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that audio article from Zack Estes. Man, I mean, everything that he writes is terrific, but I feel like that especially hits home. For companies in our industry, like I immediately think about sales. I think about installation. There's so many areas where it's easy to overpromise and underdeliver. And I've been guilty about this. I've actually talked about this quite a bit with Matt Bradley, who I work with, that like it's hard when you're a person who is optimistic. You see the best in people, you see the best in situations, and you want to help everybody to say, oh yeah, I can do that by this time, and not be realistic about what's actually on your plate and what you have the capacity for. And maybe you're in that same position. I think that the journey is, doing what Zack said and actually looking at, okay, like what is our capacity? What is our uptime? What is our downtime? How do we increase our throughput? Are we actually able to do this? And man, if we can pay attention to the things that he talked about in this article, like we're gonna make sure that we, over deliver and that we under promise. So super good. I'm thinking about, years ago, I had a boss who said, Tim, there's like 150 steps in a customer buying a fireplace, right? They come into the showroom, they look at it, they buy it, and then you have to write the purchase order up and send it to the supplier, and they send a confirmation, and it comes in on the truck. The warehouse person, stages it, and then the installers pull it. There's all these steps in the process. And he goes, the customer only cares about two of them. All they care about is buying the fireplace they want, and the day it gets installed, paying for the installation. They don't care about anything else that happens in that process. That is your problem, not their problem. And that has always stuck with me. I think that those words were very, very wise. Like, what is it that the customer's actually paying for? They're paying for the fireplace or the stove that they want, or if you sell something else, right? They're paying for the product or service, and they're paying for the completion of that, getting installed or having it delivered. And so often we are only focused on getting more. I see this so often in our industry. I see it with manufacturers where all they're concerned about is, hey, let's just get more orders. Or, retail companies or chimney service companies that are just saying, hey, let's do more marketing. Let's get more sales. I'm not against those things. I'm not against more sales. But the question is like, have we built a pipeline and actually set up our capacity and our throughput to be able to sustain those sales that we want to come in? So, man, I think that what Zack talked about with downtime is really good. So let's think about this from a sales perspective, and then let's think about it from an install perspective. So from a sales perspective, how much of the time, let's say you have a salesperson that's on the floor for 8 hours in a given day, how much of that time is spent as actually uptime? They are working with a customer and making an effort to close a sale. I would say that for most of the year, at best, it is 10%, 15% from people, walking in the door. Maybe you get a really busy Saturday where it happens to be 50, 60%. But I would guess that most of the time for most salespeople, is pretty low. So if we're just honest about that and say, okay, hey, only 15% of a salesperson's time is uptime from people coming into the store, what can we do to increase that uptime, to go from downtime to uptime, them sitting at their desk, them, going to the back to go help organize the warehouse, whatever it is. This is where I think things like follow-up come into play, that if you can, task a salesperson with actually tracking their book of business inside of a sales dashboard or a CRM system and saying, okay, cool, when people aren't in the showroom, let's make it a goal to make, 15 follow-up calls every week. Maybe you increase that to let's try to make 10 every single day. That's a way to start to get more uptime. In my view, things like sending handwritten thank you cards, putting your business card in, asking for a referral, sending out a gift card, spending time researching a builder who you're trying to learn about to go out and win business from. These are uptime activities. Now, not every single one of them will directly result in a sale right then and there, but focusing our salespeople and defining, hey, we want to make sure that the majority of our time is spent on tasks like this, it leads to absolutely huge improvement. The same thing is true for installers as well. If you look at, okay, uptime versus downtime, I mean, it's pretty obvious, but what are the downtime activities that hurt our productivity and our throughput? Well, loading up the truck in the morning. That's one of them. Going around and talking to the warehouse person. Hey, do we have this piece of pipe? I went to find it. I don't see where it is. Can you help me with that? Waiting while they're helping somebody else. That's all downtime that's hurting the productivity of the installation. Forgetting something at a job site, having to go back and get it. Even things like driving 20 minutes away from the job site for lunch. These are all factors in, how much capacity you have. And there's ways to solve them. I mean, I think Dan Woodward is so good at this. He's talked a lot about how he believes that the installers themselves should never load up their truck. That basically the day before, all their stuff should be staged, unit, vent pipe, accessories. It all should be staged on a pallet and shrink wrapped together so that when the crew comes in the morning, they back their truck up. It goes up on the forklift. It goes into the truck. They can do that for every single one of their jobs, loaded back to the front based on their day. And they're off and going. I mean, again, loading up the truck should not take up a lot of downtime. But I've been at companies where installers come in at 7:30 in the morning and they're not leaving the shop till 9:00. And it just, it's a time suck and it's just a waste of resources. So asking questions like, how can we convert that downtime into uptime is really important. And the only way it can happen is if we're actually honest and we spend time looking at the business. It's easy to be pulled in so many different directions that we don't give priority to these things. We just assume that things are, happening mostly as efficient as they could be. But what I found, we talked about this a little while ago on the podcast, but what I found again is if it's not visible, it will slip through the cracks. And when things become visible, all of a sudden there's so many areas where we realize that we can make improvement and help out our throughput and our capacity. My buddy Grant Falco, he makes his installers lunches every Monday when they come in. They fill out a menu for the whole week, and there's a group of people in the office that make them lunches. And this is the triple win. They're not driving 20 minutes away from the job site to go get an unhealthy lunch and come back. They're actually eating healthy, which it saves time on the job site, less wear and tear and risk for the trucks. But by staying on the job site, they eat quicker, they're back on the job faster, they're eating healthier, they're putting in a Gatorade and, a sandwich, vegetables and things like that. And it saves the installers money. So it's every single day that they don't go to Jimmy John's, it's they made an extra $15 for the day. So, that's a way to turn downtime into uptime at a very minimal cost and actually, give the installers something that helps them as well. So I would just ask the question as you think about this article and look at it, where in your business do you have downtime that you could convert into uptime? I was having a conversation about this just earlier today with some things in my company of okay, we've got this situation where there's downtime just because of, some prevailing circumstances. How could we change things on our end to reduce that? And it's not that there's always going to be like an absolute oh, well, we can cut it in half by doing this, but small improvements really compound over time. I think that that's what Zack is getting at in the article. It's really amazing what happens with small effort and an attitude of continuous improvement within a company. He ended by talking about it's amazing what a difference 30 minutes a day can make. And the way that I like to think about this is in your company, there's going to be times where you play offense and where you play defense. Defense are going to be like all the unknowns that just come up throughout the day. Someone calling with a problem, a team member doesn't show up. You're in a tough spot you didn't see coming. That's playing defense. Well, in the language of the 4 disciplines of execution, they would say that if you live by playing defense, your business will die tomorrow. You have to play offense to survive until tomorrow. If you only play offense and never play defense at all, well, you're going to die today, right? If you don't call that customer back that, the installers are on the job site for, if you just ignore it because you're working on some big picture thing for tomorrow. But what I've found is that playing offense is what you have to do to win. You have to. In a lot of ways, in my view, the defense will take care of itself. Not completely, but if you build some structures, the defense can take care of itself, but the offense will never happen unless you make time for it. And I love that Zack said 30 minutes a day. Going back to that book I mentioned, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, they talk about if you can just spend 10% of your time working on playing offense, working on the things that will truly improve your business, make things easier for everybody. It's amazing what a ripple effect that has. There's certain tasks that I have in my life that are really important to get done, but no one's making me get them done. And in situations like that, I found a little bit of effort, even if I just spent 15 minutes on it every morning for a week. It's incredible what a difference that makes. Now, it's easy to go, oh, it's only 15 minutes. I'm better off just jumping into this thing. But no. Anything can wait for 15 minutes. So taking 15 minutes to work on the task that no one's making you do, but will make a disproportionate difference in your business, man, if you do a little bit of that over time, those micro wins turn into some really big results. At least that's what I found. So, man, top to bottom, I think this was just an incredible article. My hope is that you're inspired. I mean, again, I'm thinking sales and installation. Maybe there's a different part of your business that you're thinking of, but I hope you can take this and put it into practice and see consistent results over time as you invest in a culture of improvement. Well, hey, that is all we have for today's episode. If you enjoyed this content and you want to get the FireTime magazine delivered to you every month when it comes out, you can go to itsfiretime.com/subscribe. Just throw in your email address. You'll get it totally for free every month when a new issue comes out. And yeah, I hope you got value out of this. I think that there is so much that we can take away and put into practice. So I will leave you to that. And as always, we'll talk again very soon. Thank you for listening to the FireTime podcast. To learn more, visit the website itsfiretime.com. Music from this episode was written and recorded by In Bloom out of Portland, Oregon. We thank you for listening to the FireTime podcast, where it's never hot enough, slow is fast, and the way to win is to make it so stupidly easy to buy from you that there's no excuse not to. We'll see you next time.
All in to burn.